Hello, fifth graders, and welcome to another ELA lesson. My name is Miss Mooney.
And I'm Mrs. Wilson.
So today's lesson is going to be on the topic character backstory and character motivation.
The objective today is I can define and understand the vocabulary terms character backstory and character motivation.
Awesome. I'm excited to get started. So let's do a little bit of review from the week so far. We watched the videos. So the first word that we looked at was theme. And so the theme is the moral, the message, or the lesson of a story. And so when we're trying to figure out the theme, we use the questions, or we ask ourselves a question: what did the character learn? And also, why did the characters act in this way? And so we discussed the movie Nemo and discussed what the theme of Nemo was and how we figured out that that was the theme. And so we're actually going to be using Nemo a little bit later on the lesson. So Mrs. Wilson, I hope you like Nemo, because I'm really excited to talk about it again. And then we also talked about this week about figurative language. And so we talked about how there are many different types of figurative language, but this week we're really going to focus on metaphors and similes. And so metaphors are when we compare two unlike things directly. So if I said, Mrs. Wilson is a shining star, that would be a metaphor because I'm saying that she is a shining star. And then for similes, that is where we compare two unlike things using like or using as. So if I were to say that sentence as a simile, I could say, Mrs. Wilson is as bright as a shining star. So those are some examples of metaphor and simile, and we're going to be talking about metaphor in Mrs. Wilson's lesson later on this week.
Yes, ma'am. So our two new vocabulary words are character's backstory and character's motivation. So our first one, character's backstory, is a character's past is often necessary to explain a character's motivation. It can add insight on personality or create reader sympathy. So sometimes people do something because of their past, or the things that they've been through can also help their motivation. So they kind of work together.
Mm-hmm.
So character motivation is what motivates the characters to behave in a particular way. So what are driving them? What is making them behave in a certain way or act a certain way, or what is motivating them to get somewhere? And so we're really going to break those two things down today.
Yeah,
so those are two
great questions. And then I also saw in the definition of character backstory, it talks about how having insight or having information on a character's past can create reader sympathy. And so reader sympathy is kind of a tricky phrase, but basically what that means is it makes us like the character, and it makes us, as a reader, really understand why the character is like that way, almost as if that character was a friend in our real life. So it's pretty cool. It kind of makes the reader come
to understand. Yeah, for sure. It makes you understand where they're coming from. Definitely.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Definitely an insight, for sure.
Yeah, I like that. So the way that we're going to get started on today's lesson is that me and Mrs. Wilson actually wrote our own character backstory. So this is almost as if you were watching a movie and me and Mrs. Wilson were like the main characters in a movie. Or maybe you're reading a book and we're the main characters. So we're going to pretend for that for a second. So this is mine, of course, Miss Mooney. So there's a picture of me when I was younger to show you a little bit of a visual part of my backstory. So I wrote down a couple different things about my backstory. So I'm from Mesa, Arizona, so that's where I was born, that's where I live. I also put that I have two siblings. I have an older brother and I have an older sister. I wrote that I always looked forward to the first day of school. That was always my favorite time of the year, when I got to meet my new teacher and I got to meet all the new students in my class, and I knew that we'd do some fun activities on the first day of school. Another one I put is I love fashion, I love art, playing games and doing projects. I'm always up for an art project or a science project. And I also really like reading fashion magazines and things like that. And then next I put that I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher until I went to college. And so as you know, me and Mrs. Wilson are both practicing to become teachers and both in school for that. And so I didn't know that I wanted to be a teacher until I went to college. And so I think Mrs. Wilson's a little bit different about that. So that's kind of a fun little thing. That. And then, I put up 2, but my next one is I've always loved to learn. And so that's why I love school so much, because I think there's so many new things you can learn. And then lastly, I put that I have lots of pets growing up, and I really enjoyed playing outside with animals and bugs and all things like that. I love all of the like caterpillars and butterflies and ladybugs. So there's my backstory. So if I was a character, this was the backstory you would get.
That's wonderful. These are great. These are things I didn't know.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, learned something new.
So I kind of put mine all up. So this is me when I was in school. I was probably about around your guys' age. So my backstory is I was born in Miami, Arizona, and that's where I live right now. It's about, I'm not sure where you're from, but it's a little mining town in Arizona. My parents are Sandra and Vernon White. So that's my backstory. I'm the oldest of 3 children. So just like Miss Mooney, I have a brother and sister, but she's the baby. I am the oldest. So it goes me, my brother Jonathan, and then my sister Melanie. She's the baby. My mom did childcare out of her home when I was growing up, and I would play school with the children. And I would stay after class to gather discarded papers or any papers the teacher didn't want, so I could use at home for my pretend classroom. Anyone with the night, either with me or my siblings, I would play school with them, as well as the neighborhood children. Until this day, somebody's like, I remember playing school with you when you're little. I used to make everybody play with me.
Wow.
My brother and his friend played, and I had to send them to the principal's office because they weren't playing my class game right.
That sounds like
So
you
that's the
always wanted to be a
backstory. What'd you say?
You always wanted to be a teacher?
Since I was a little kid, I eat, breathe.
Awesome.
That's all I could think about was being a teacher one day, and it's finally come. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's a great backstory. So as you may have guessed, next we're going to be talking about Nemo's backstory. So yesterday, if you watched yesterday's lesson about theme, we talked about the theme of Nemo and the theme about friendship, and we talked about the theme of wanting to trust your friends and the theme of wanting to take a risk and go on adventures. And so we talked about the theme, but what we didn't talk about is that in order to understand the theme and really understand a story like this, you have to understand the characters. So we're going to be talking about Nemo's backstory and how Nemo's backstory led us to know this theme of friendship. So just to remind you what character backstory is, again, like Mrs. Wilson said earlier, it's a character's past. So it's like how me and Mrs. Wilson were talking about ourselves and our past when we were younger. We're going to be talking about Nemo's past. So the definition of backstory, again, is a character's past and is often necessary to explain a character's motivation. And so a motivation is kind of like something that makes you do something, the reason why you do something, or maybe like the purpose behind your actions. So it can add insight on personality, and it can also create that reader sympathy, or that us as the reader wanting to help them or thinking of them as a friend. So this backstory is how the character feels. We know what they enjoy, we know their family, we know who their friends are, and we understand the reasoning behind their actions, or that motivation word that we just talked about. So let's look at how we form this character backstory, because we have to ask ourselves a couple of questions in order to figure out what we want to know about the character. So we want to know who's the character's friends, who's their family. So Mrs. Wilson and I talked about our siblings, we talked about our parents, and that's our family, and they add to who we are, our personalities. Mrs. Wilson also talked about some friends growing up and how you would play school with those friends. And do you think those friends added to your personality?
Most definitely, yes.
Yeah, I think so too about mine.
Well, what's funny, a quick story, is I used to be a cheerleader. So my neighbor, she played sports. So she would have me do sports things, and I would play basketballs and jam my fingers and stuff, but make her play cheer with me. And this one time I had her climb up on my shoulders, and she freaked. And so she was like hanging off her garage. But I think those experiences kind of shows you that there's different people. You have to have the respect and kind of understand that not everybody's a cheerleader, not everybody's a sports person, but you can kind of meet in the middle.
I think so too. It also sounds like you were teaching her how to do the thing that you enjoy too. And so maybe that also helped motivate you to become the teacher that you are today. So that's really cool, how all of that intertwined. So, kind of like what Miss Wilson just said, what motivates the character's action? So, her action is that she wanted to learn and she wanted to teach other people. And so, her actions is that she was teaching her friends and she was playing school with her friends and she was teaching her neighbor next door how to be a cheerleader and things like that. So, that's what's motivated her actions. And then next, we're going to ask ourselves, where does the character live and what is their home like? So we also want to know if, like Nemo, they live in a huge ocean under the sea, or maybe like in our book Esperanza, Esperanza lives on a beautiful farm. And so we want to know what their home is like. What are the features of their home or the traits of their home? And then next, we're curious about, what does the character want? What is their mission in the story? What is their goal in the end? And then next, we're going to ask ourselves, are the characters' thoughts similar to those of their family members? And so this really makes a difference in movies kind of like Nemo, where Nemo's thoughts were all about adventure and seeing the ocean and exploring and making friends, where we know with Marlin's thoughts were, how can I keep my family safe and how can I make sure that Nemo is safe all the time? So their thoughts were a little bit different, and that added to the plot and added to Nemo's character. And then lastly, we want to know, what does the character enjoy or what do they like to do? So their hobbies or what they enjoy or what they do in their free time, that really talks about what the character is and their personality. So let's take a look at how this looks like with Nemo. So for Nemo's backstory, we know that Marlin is Nemo's father. And so that's a little look into his family. We also see that Nemo wants to explore the ocean, he wants to make new friends, and he wants to learn about the world around him. So those answer our question, or what are Nemo's thoughts, or what is his goal? And then next we're going to ask ourselves, next our backstory point is that Marlin is worried about the unknown parts of the ocean, and he wants Nemo to be safe. So when we ask ourselves, how are Nemo's ideas different than Marlin's ideas, it's adventure and going out and taking risks versus being safe and staying at home and with your family. And then for number 4, we put that Nemo thinks about the world around him and wants to be adventurous and explore. So those are his thoughts, that's his mission. And the next one is that Nemo is not scared of the unknown, and he is ready for an adventure. And so that tells us the backstory of his personality, and that why he gets out of the anemone in the first place, because he wants that adventure and he's not scared of the unknown. I mean, he was a little bit scared at first, but we could see that he had some fun on his adventure. So all of these parts of his backstory help us know why Nemo is the way he is. And then, as Mrs. Wilson's going to talk about next, it tells us about his motivations and his reasons for his actions.
All right, we're going to talk about character motivation. And again, to say the definition again, it's it's what motivates characters to behave in a particular way. So we thought, me and Miss Mooney gave you like a background of us and kind of like a little bit of story. And now we're going to kind of give you some ideas of what motivated us to become a teacher. Like Miss Mooney said, she didn't find out until college. Like Mrs. Wilson said, I've known since I was a little girl. So I'm going to go through what motivated me to become a teacher, and then Miss Mooney will explain why she became a teacher. Awesome. These are some of the things that motivate me. So constant desire to be a teacher since I was a little girl. That is all I thought about. The love for children. I always loved children. I have 4 children of my own. But growing up, I was always babysitting, always playing with the kids. And a lot of my friends had kids before I did. And I always played with their children. So I just love children. Mm-hmm. Always on the lookout for classroom things, no matter where I am. I could be at a thrift store. I could be at a yard sale. And I'm constantly looking for things that I could use in a classroom, or how can I use this in a classroom? Mm-hmm. The feeling of wanting to go to college and further my education, and my own children motivate me to be better and to change myself for them, and that motivates me to be what I want, because if they can see me achieving my goals, then I think that they would want to achieve their goals as well. And the encouragement I get from my husband, he is very encouraging and definitely wants me to finish school, and it will just benefit my family altogether. So
Wow.
that's what motivates me to become a teacher.
Those are great reasons. I like that. That's awesome. So, a couple reasons why, or a couple motivators as to why I wanted to become a teacher is because I love meeting new people and I love making new friends. And so, I love knowing that I'm going to have every year a classroom of brand new children in my class. And so, I get to make friends with them and I get to know them, but then I also get to know their parents and their grandparents and I get to know their siblings. And I think that's awesome that I just get to meet all these new people. And then next, I put that I enjoy art projects, I like lessons, and I love collaborating with other people. And so, kind of like when me and Mrs. Wilson do these lessons together, I have so much fun when we get to put our brains together and we get to discuss. And me and Mrs. Wilson, before we do these lessons, we have just a whole brainstorming session to where we talk about what we want to do. And that's kind of like a project, and I love doing that. And then next, I said that I
Me
think
too.
school is very important. And so that's kind of like your reasoning, Mrs. Wilson, when you said that you think it's important that you wanted to further your education. That's how I felt as well. And then next, I said that I think people can never stop learning. And so I know even when I write these lessons, like when I started talking about theme again, it really got me thinking about the theme of different books that I like to read. I'm reading a book right now, and it got me thinking of what is the theme of this book? And, I've even had to figure it out. And so I love that I get to learn along with my students. And then next, I put that my siblings and my mom were teachers. So my brother's a teacher, my sister's a teacher, and then my mom was a teacher before she retired. And then next, I said that I feel lucky that my job gets to make me happy every day. I think that is the coolest thing in the world. And so some of these kind of seem like our backstories at the same time because it's like what we think, our experiences. But these are what motivates us to behave a particular way. And so the particular way that we're behaving is that we're going to school and that we're trying to become teachers and that we are practicing through teaching these lessons and things like that. So these are all of our motivators.
Yep. All these things that I mentioned are definitely the driving force that drives me to finish, drives me to do my best, and drives me to finish this goal that I set. It's definitely motivating.
I think so too. That's awesome.
So how we can figure out a character's motivation? And these are some questions you can ask yourself. So the first one, you want to ask yourself, what are they working for? Is there something they're working for? They could not be working for anything, but is there an end result? Is there an end goal? Is there something that they talk about quite often? Like, is there something they have, like, sometimes you'll hear people say, do they have the eyes on the prize? What is that prize? What are they looking for? So that's a good question to ask to find the character's motivation.
Cool.
Then you can ask, what are the reasons behind a character's behavior? So you can almost think about their backstory. What are the reasonings? Why are they acting this way? What is their motivation? Why are they acting so excited about this? Or why are they acting so sad about it? You got to kind of find out the reasons of behind a character's behavior, and that will help you find their motivation. What is driving them?
Mm-hmm.
And remember, before we've talked a lot about eternal things and external things. So is it eternal? Is it external? Is it something with they want to have bigger muscles, or is it something inside that they're working towards? You just kind of have to figure those things, and they'll help you find what they're being motivated by.
Mm-hmm.
And then what is the type of motivation? So there's 3 different kinds. There's extrinsic, intrinsic, or family. And I'll explain what those two are. So you can ask yourself, what is that? So Extrinsic is being motivated by money, by praise, by awards, recognition, or benefits. So if they're having a motivation that extrinsic, usually there's that prize at the end that I was talking about. Maybe they are looking for praise. Maybe they're doing something because they want somebody to say good job to them. Or they're working for it because they're going to get this big shiny gold medal at the end. And that would be extrinsic. And then intrinsic is the type of motivation relies on a personal internal values and reward of feeling good to achieve a positive reaction. So that's definitely something that inside that good job is they're working towards that. It makes them feel good about themselves. And then family is simply what it sounds like. This type of motivation is when you have the desire to do things to better your family. And that's kind of like how I was talking about how my family is motivating, is because I want to do things for them and to make better.
Wow, that's awesome. I was thinking about when you were reading those, I was trying to think about which one Finding Nemo would be. And I was thinking maybe intrinsic.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I know, it's a fancy word.
I know, it's a little.
Because it's definitely the desire of seeing his son again, it's definitely internal for sure. He's making himself, he can conquer these big things, and he's so brave. It's kind of feeding that internal, praise for like Miss was talking about.
I think so too.
So you can ask yourself, does the motivation excite them or it make them mad? Sometimes it's not always a happy feeling. Sometimes they're not feeling their stuff. Sometimes people backstories and things that are motivating, sometimes people are motivated by anger, or they could be sad about something. Something is making them do something or motivating them to do something, and it doesn't always have to be happy or sad. And like you'll find out in Esperanza, it's not always exciting. It's not always for a good reason. They're being motivated sometimes by sad things.
Mm-hmm. That's also kind of like in Finding Nemo too, with Marlin's not happy that Nemo's missing, and his motivation is because he's so sad that he's gone. Yeah.
Oh, and scared. He's worried. There's all those feelings in that.
Yeah.
And then you can also ask yourself, do you think their motivations come from their background? And like we gave a couple of examples, it's a good thing to know their background, because then you can almost find out why they're being motivated. And are these coming directly from that? And as you'll see in the text that we've been reading, a lot of our motivation
Can you repeat that last one about the motivation coming from their background? I think my computer was lagging a little bit.
I kind of froze. I kind of
about that
there for a second. No, that's okay. And I was just saying that as we can tell in our text, you will see that Esperanza's motivation definitely comes from her background.
I think so too. That's a great point to make.
So we're going to find out Nemo's and Marvin's motivation. Now, right there in the middle, I kind of put home really big, because now through their adventures and their backstory and everything that's happening to them, they both kind of have that motivation where they're ready to go home, And so Nemo, his first goal is to get out of that tank, and he needs to survive with all the things that he's going through and to get home, right? And he wants to get out of the net at the end. So there's all these things that are motivating Nemo, and the biggest one is to get home. So you can see that arrow towards Marvin, because that's Marvin's type of motivation. And you can see Marvin's pointing towards Nemo because they have that similar motivation, is to get together again, to be together, and to go home and to survive. So Marvin's motivation obviously is to find his son, no matter. Marvin is being super brave, and he is being highly motivated to find his son. He had to escape the shark in the beginning. He went lots of things with like, I think the jellyfish and the turtles and all kinds of things. So I put to survive, and that's kind of like the same thing like his son. And he wants to save his son, and especially like right at the end when he's caught in the net. Those or just a few things that were motivating them through the movie. And I'm sure Miss Mooney could think of some more, and I'm sure you guys can too. But those were the things that stuck out to me. And right in the middle, it was just to get home safely. What do you think, Miss Mooney?
I think so too. Yeah. I like that you talked about how Nemo and Marvin share a motivation of wanting to survive because they're little fish in a huge ocean and with the sharks and with all those different animals. And so it's sometimes characters have a shared goal or a shared motivation. And so, like you said, in the end, their goal is to make it back home safely and be back together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for, yeah,
That's great.
I like that.
So then next, we're going to bring it back to Esperanza Rising. And so after we've talked about what character backstory is and then what character motivation is, we're going to talk about how that looks for Esperanza's life. So let's start with Esperanza's character backstory. So we know that Esperanza is from Aguas Calientes, Mexico. That's where she lives with her family in the beginning. And Esperanza lived on El Rancho de las Rosas with her mother and her father, and that was the ranch that her father owns. Then we found out that Esperanza's father died and her house burned down. So that was a really scary and sad part of the reading that we did, but that also goes with Esperanza's character backstory. It's a part of her family. And then next, Esperanza and her family escaped during the night to head to the train in order to go to the United States. And so that was another big part of their backstory because they no longer lived in the same place. They no longer lived in Aguas Calientes. Now they're trying to go somewhere else.
Yes. And as you can see, like a lot of those things in her backstory are definitely now motivating Esperanza's character. So Esperanza wants to be in her family. So they're making all these hard decisions, and they make the decision to go to the United States. And those are hard decisions, and she's being motivated. She's motivated to do those things because she does not want to separate from her family. Esperanza has that strong desire of her family to be happy and to stay, especially with Abuelita when she's like, she went to the nuns. She wants her to be with her in the United States and her mom. And Esperanza and her family want freedom. They know if they stay in Mexico that they're not going to be free, that they'll probably send Esperanza off to a boarding school. You know, a lot of things will change. Like her mom would be married to her Theo, and it would just be really, really strange. So I don't know if you guys can see that, but she is motivated by these things that are happening to her. And like I said before, they're not always happy. That sometimes they're hard decisions, but she's definitely motivated.
Yeah, I think you made a great point about how this is an example of sadness or of anger being a motivation. And you know, in that first chapter we read, all Esperanza talked about was how much she loved the land she lived on and how happy she was there. But now their new motivation is to find safety and to find happiness and to be with their families, and that means leaving the land. And so that backstory of her house burning down and her father passing away and that her family having to escape, all of those are part of that backstory now of her new motivation. So yeah, that's a great example of something that is from fear, from being worried or scared. So I'm excited to read what happens next in the book.
I know. So to a preview of the rest of the week. So if you come and join me for the rest of the week, we're going to be talking about metaphors and themes. So these are the things that you can do. So I can interpret two big metaphors in chapter 8 in the Las Almendras in Esperanza Rising. So I know we got kind of lost in the week, but before this week, you guys at least need to read chapter 8, and it's on page 121. So read up to there, and then definitely spend some time in chapter 8 because we'll be spending Thursday and Friday really breaking down that chapter. So definitely catch up on that.
And we'll put how to read it in the learning guide too, if students don't have the book at home. So you can find that in the learning guide today.
Yes. Definitely. Yes. Get caught up because it's a really good story.
Good book.
And I'm looking forward to breaking chapter 8 down with you guys. Then at the end of the lesson, I would hope that you guys can say, I can explain what it means to find the theme of the book or story. So a lot of how we did today, we're going to use like your backstory, and we're going to find the motivation and those types of things. And then you can identify those themes in Esperanza Rising. So I have a fun, exciting next week, or the rest of the week.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
Wow, well, that sounds pretty cool. Well, I think that's going to be a great rest of the week. So thank you so much, fifth graders, for being here with us today and learning about our two new vocab words, character backstory and character motivation.
You guys are gaining so much knowledge this summer. I'm excited for you guys to do this.
Awesome.
Please come back. We love it. Me and Miss Mooney love this. So we hope you love it too.
So we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.